Hi, this is Renata. I am doing this video on crowding or invasion of personal space because someone from the TI community asked me if I could do a video addressing this issue because this is something that she deals with on a regular basis. So the situation is, this lady loves to go out in public despite the heavy targeting that she gets. She takes public transportation most places she goes. The problem is she has to deal with people not only stalking and harassing her, but people are constantly invading her personal space, and it's definitely intentional. And this invasion of personal space is also known as crowding. So crowding is basically where people just get way too close to you, usually in a public setting. It could be one person doing this, or it could be more people. It could be a crowd of people. It just depends. And this crowding can also be intentional, or it can be unintentional. And the reason I say that it can be unintentional is because we live in a very populated society. Most, especially your big cities, are going to be overpopulated. And so we're going to deal with crowds in most places that we go. We're going to deal with long lines, with crowded streets. The freeways are always jam-packed. There's traffic jams everywhere you go. Public transportation is usually crowded. The trains, the buses. Especially if you live in some of the larger cities like San Francisco or New York, you're going to deal with crowds. You're going to deal with people in your personal space. It just happens. For the most part, most people have become accustomed to this particular type of space invasion just because we've pretty much had to deal with it all of our lives, so it's second nature. But when this crowding is happening on a regular basis, like it is for this lady, even when she's not in a crowded place, it's definitely intentional, and it's designed to target her and to make her feel uncomfortable and to trigger her to get a negative response. So I'll give some examples for those of you who are not real familiar with this. I'll give some examples of how some targets, including myself, deal with this crowding, because this crowding is a very popular stalking tactic. Harassment tactic is very popular in the TI community. Some people may experience it but not have a name for it, so I just kind of want to give a little more clarity on what this is. So it's very common for a target to be crowded at a cash register. You'll be in line. You could possibly be the only one in line. When you get to the register, all of a sudden, here comes a crowd of people. Or it could be one person, but they get very close up on you, like they're monitoring the things that you're doing. That's very common in the TI community. Also, people may walk up on you and talk very close in your face instead of keeping a reasonable distance. Or you could be having a conversation with someone and someone walk up and just get in between of the two of you and join in on the conversation. That's another example. I noticed when I went to visit New York a couple years ago, it seems as if they really don't, and not everyone there, but I just noticed this, that the people kind of really invade your space a little more, like they're a little more aggressive. When they're talking to you, they kind of really enter in your personal space. I noticed that a lot in New York. So this invasion of personal space may not really bother people who are from those sort of cultures. I mean, that seems to be the norm for people on the East Coast. But it's not comfortable for everyone. You may get people who walk up very closely behind you. I get that a lot. They walk very close behind you. And the way I handle that is I just stop and I make them go around, because it happens a lot and I know that it's intentional. You may also deal with perpetrator cars that may box you in when you're driving, kind of obstruct you where you can't get out. That happens a lot. Or you may get tailgated. That's another example. When you're driving, they're just driving way too close, or they may cut you off. You may possibly be on public transportation or somewhere. You could even be standing somewhere or sitting somewhere and you're reading something and someone comes behind you and they're sort of reading over your shoulder. That used to happen on the train a lot. I would see that on the train a lot. People would be reading their newspapers and someone else is standing behind them reading their newspaper. That's invasion. That is definitely an invasion. In this lady's situation, she could be on the bus and the stalkers, the people who are sent to harass her, will give her very little space to pass down the aisle. And if she says politely, "Excuse me, can I get by?" they barely move, and so she can't get by. And so when she does go to pass and she brushes them, then it becomes this big fiasco, which was all orchestrated from the beginning. So these are all examples of crowding, space invasion, and there are many, many more examples. So I did a little research on this whole subject of personal space, and I want to share with you what some of the etiquette experts say. They say that total strangers should keep 2 feet away from the next person. Okay, so 2, in general, as I said, we live in a crowded society, so this may not always be feasible, but in general, the next person should be about 2 feet away from you. They also say that your intimate space extends an arm's length away from your body in every direction. So if you hold out your arms, the next person should be that far away in every direction, all the way 360 degrees around your body. Should be clear about about an arm's length. They say that anything other than that, anyone in closer than that arm's length, that space is reserved for personal friends and close family members and your pets. But strangers generally are not welcome in that space unless you invite them in. So for your personal friends, your close family members, they may be in that space to hug you or to sit on your lap, or if it's your significant other, to kiss you or to cuddle or whatever. But everybody else should be an arm's length away in general. Okay, they also say that your intimate space and your personal space has its invisible boundaries. And no one should cross those boundaries unless they're invited in. So they say you think of your personal space as a fence with a closed door, an arm's length around you. And if you open that door, those are the people that are invited in. But other than that, they should not invite themselves in. That's a violation. But in this lady's case, As I said, she takes public transportation and she has to deal with this crowding way too often. But on top of this space invasion, people coming into her personal space, she also has to deal with people violating her by putting their hands on her constantly, by touching her personal belongings. These people will do things like pat her on the back, pat her on the shoulder to ask for quote unquote directions. But they really don't want directions. They're really perpetrators. She might get poked, pushed, brushed upon, or any of these type of things. This usually happens when she's out in public. She could be at the laundromat. She could be on the bus. She could be walking down the street. These are the things that she has to deal with. And as I said, if she moves forward when they give her very little space, they start a confrontation. So it appears that it's her. So this is a really, really touchy, very important situation to address, because these people are definitely trying to set her up. So let me read the definition of what the law says about personal space. Okay, personal space law and legal definition. Personal space is an approximate area surrounding an individual in which other people should not physically violate in order for them to feel comfortable and secure. It is the zone around individuals which they regard as psychologically theirs. The amount of personal space required for any given person is subjective. It also depends on how well you know the other person. The more intimate the relationship, the less personal space is involved. The law does not recognize a specific crime or civil action based on violation of personal space per se. However, the law does recognize various actions based on assault, harassment, and unwelcome touching. Okay, this assault, harassment, and unwelcome touching is where the law can help if you're a victim of this crowding. Okay, as in this lady's case. If someone is putting their hands on you, as this law says, unwelcome touching. She does not know these people. These are total strangers. And they are touching her, poking her, pushing her, doing all kinds of things to provoke her. They're crossing the line. They are very much crossing the line. These are assaults that is happening to this lady. All of this can really cause anxiety, stress, fear, intimidation, and it can be very irritating and very triggering. It can put a person in a fight or flight mode where you get so anxious you just want to either get out of there or physically defend yourself. Now, she being assaulted, need to really check the law on that, but I mean, these people are assaulting her. And I can totally relate to this because I go through this myself. My crowding happens a lot at work around the ice machine for whatever reason. Well, I do know why. Because they want me to stop going to the cafeteria where I get harassed by the staff and others. They want me to stop going there to get ice because I drink ice water. But I won't stop because sometimes this is a stand your ground moment. And this is how you overcome things. You just keep going through it until it doesn't bother you anymore. But yes, I deal with this crowding as well. No one's at the ice machine until I get there. And then a ton of people come. And it's been happening for a long time now. It's usually one of my co-workers in my group. They will mysteriously show up at the ice machine or right next to me at the ice machine. And, I know what it's all about, but it is unwelcomed. I also deal with the touching, the poking, and this is sort of a new thing for me. Mainly, probably because I've been talking to this lady about what she's going through, so I guess they had the grand idea to start doing it to me as well. And it is a very uncomfortable thing. It is. It happened as late as yesterday, as a matter of fact. When I came out of the movies, a lady just came and bumped into me. My family was standing right there, saw the whole thing. And she said, "Excuse me." And that's what they do. They play it off as if it was an accident. And then the same stalker lady popped up at the Walmart I was at. So it is a hard thing to deal with. It catches you off guard. If you haul off and hit them, you will probably be the one in jail. So it's really a very difficult thing to deal with. I also deal with it all of a sudden at City Hall and the meetings that I go there. People who never touched me before, all of a sudden they're touching, and I call it talking with the hands, slapping me on the arm as they're talking and things like that. And these things never happened to me before, and they're happening too much, and I'm documenting all of it because I want to make sure I get that documented. But it's difficult to deal with. So I've been trying to think of some ways to deal with this. I want to share with this lady and anyone else who may be going through this what I came up with. Number one, we really need to make sure that we pray before we leave the house. And particularly ask God to protect you from the enemy should you happen to encounter this type of targeting, or any targeting for that matter. Also ask for self-control, because it's obvious that these people are trying to trigger you into violence. And that's something that you really don't want to do, because you, I guarantee, will be the one dealing with some legal stuff, either in jail, in a mental institution, and they will have several perpetrator witnesses to say that it was all you. So be very careful on how you handle this. As I said before, some particular cases of this personal invasion of your personal space may be a stand your ground moment. Sometimes you just deal with it. As I mentioned with the ice machine, when I want ice, I go get the ice. I don't care who's going to be there. I go get the ice, knowing that they're going to send their workplace mobbers to do what they do, the people in my group to be somewhere near, and by the time I get to the register, they'll be at the register. But I still do it. I stand my ground, because that's not going to harm me in any kind of way. If it is, well, psychologically, it can do some harm. But if it's not going to harm you physically, and you can handle it mentally, then stand your ground. Stand your ground. On the other hand, if your space is being invaded and it's making you very uncomfortable, you may need to take the high road, and you may need to be the one to move or leave the situation or whatever, so that it does not escalate. This is not about ego. It's not about proving something to anyone. It's about you being wise and avoiding confrontations at all costs. And most importantly, it's about you taking care of yourself. So never try to prove anything to anyone. If you need to leave the situation, leave the situation. I've done it many times. It's the wise thing to do if that's what you feel that you need to do. Because these kind of things can definitely get out of control. They can turn into an all-out brawl, and you'll be the one. Trust me, you will be the one. As the person that's targeted and all of this is orchestrated anyway, you will be the one to go to jail, mental institution, or worse. So use wisdom in everything you do. You might need to take pictures because this is a case where you need proof that this is happening. Because it's done so subtle. Someone kicked me the other day at work. It's so subtle. So if you can catch any of this on film, video, or snapshot picture, you should do that. Even if after the fact it's already over, because like I said, it happened so quick, you can still turn on your video and ask the person the question, why did you touch me? Why did you, whatever they did to you? And at least you have that part on video. And don't be shy about it, because if someone is perpetrating a crime against you, and as I just read that legal definition, it's a crime. Unwanted touching is a crime. And you have a right to take a picture of a criminal perpetrating a criminal act on you. So definitely try to get your evidence as much as you can in this manner. If it is something that needs to be reported to the police, that's what you should do. Okay. Also, if you have to address any of this, like I said, some things you're just going to take the high road on and you're just going to go on with life, which is the case for most targeting. We just have to learn to deal with some things, unfortunately, but we do. But if this is something that crosses all the way over the line and you feel that it needs to be addressed in any kind of manner, make sure you calm down enough before you address it to where you are responding to the situation and not reacting. And let me explain the difference. Responding, if something happens, you take the time to take a breath. You may need to walk away from the situation for a minute. You think things through logically, calmly, and you address the situation in a very calm, very respectful, very logical manner. You're not hollering. You're not all hyped up. You're not ready to fight. You are just responding to this situation that needs to be addressed. When you react to a situation, you're just going off. You are just going off. You just hot-headed, ready to throw down, not trying to hear anybody. And that's not good. And that goes for any situation, not only this one. That's not good. That's not good. Because reacting and responding is the difference between you going to jail or you going home. That's just the bottom line, straight up. That's just the bottom line. Because if you ever seen anybody who's just all hyped up, you can't stop them. There's no reasoning with them. Those situations never end well. And with this lady dealing with these unwanted assaults, touches, you could easily fly off the handle. You really could. Especially you're going through this 3, 4, 5 times a day. I think I counted 5 times this week where someone put their hands on me. These are people who never touch me. All of a sudden, everybody's touching, including my supervisor. Everybody's touching. So, We just have to find a way to deal with this. With all other organized stalking tactics, when you react strongly to something, they will not only continue to do that tactic, but they will escalate it. And I think all targets know that. Because they see by your reaction that it was an effective way to target you. So they're going to keep it coming. So my advice there, even if it does bother you, never let them see you sweat if possible. Don't let them see you sweat. This is really a very serious, because most people do not allow people to just put their hands on them. But because this is done so subtle and it looks so innocent, like all the other targeting stuff they do looks so innocent, it's a real hard one. I'm not gonna lie, it's a hard one. It is. But I've come to the conclusion that this whole targeting situation is another one of life's tests. We all go through tests in life, whether we believe it or not. We go through tests. We go through many tests, a series of tests in life. And this is just another one. Just like any other test, we're going to have to prepare ourselves for this, and we're going to have to pass it. Because if we fail this test, we're going to have to stay at this level and keep retaking it until we pass it. That's how life goes. Once you pass the test, just like in school, you go to the next level. In this case, we will go to the next level in life. And this is how we grow. It's just, if you look back on your life and you think of some things that you used to do, or some ways that you used to act, you can say to yourself, wow, I remember when that used to happen. It used to trigger me and I used to go off on this, or I remember that. And you see how you pass those tests and you've come through them. I went to Walmart yesterday. When my targeting first began, or when I first realized it, I used to go to Walmart several times a week. That was my favorite store. I would go several times a week. And I would be harassed in Walmart like you would not believe. It was horrible. But I didn't know I was being targeted at that time. I would have the worst anxiety and the worst panic attacks. I would be sweating. I would feel like I was going to pass out. It was horrible. Their security would harass me something terrible. Their undercovers in the store. And now I know that half of those people were stalkers, but I didn't know that then. I thought they all were undercovers. It was a horrible experience. I was traumatized in Walmart. Of one of the many places I was traumatized, but Walmart was one of the main ones. And so I stopped going. And I didn't go for the next maybe 3 years, maybe 4. I would not step foot in Walmart because I was traumatized. Recently, I started going back to Walmart. Actually, I went to Walmart yesterday. And every time I go there now, I thank God, because I remember how traumatized I was going in that store. So now I see that because I worked on the anxiety, I did my homework on this whole stalking thing, so I know what it's about. I know their goals. And so that was a test that I have passed. I can go in there now. I'm over that. I've grown so far. And they still do. I went in there yesterday. They still do the same security thing and the same aiming the carts at me and all of that. But it does not bother me like it did back then. So that was a test. And I passed that test. But just like in school, your tests come once a week. Every Friday you had to take a test. Well, it seems like with targeting, the tests come more than every Friday. They seem to come daily. But this right here, this space invasion, invasion of the personal space, I could probably even deal with that. But the people putting the hands on this lady and on me and on other targets, it's not acceptable. And this is by far one of the hardest tests that this lady has ever had to deal with, and the rest of us who deal with this. But I have no doubt that she will figure out what she needs to do to pass this test and all other tests that comes her way. And the rest of us will as well. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know that I'm actually very grateful that this lady brought this subject matter up, because this happens. This happens to a lot of targets. Most people probably don't realize that it's part of targeting when people are all up on you in the store, and but it is. And it has a name. It's called crowding, or invasion of your personal space. And it's a real issue. And it's not acceptable. Especially when they add the crowding with the unwanted touches. It's not acceptable. But it is another test that we as TIs will pass. So God bless and stay strong.